I got to kick this thing off. Can I kick it off? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ladies and gentlemen, listen.
Hi, I'm Marika Moore, and if you want to get all up in my business, you should check out my new book, Unsolicited Marriage Advice, where I provide an analysis of the best marriage advice that I've received over the past 16 years or so. So head on over to Amazon and buy it now.
Conversate with Us Radio presents the Man Listen Show. We are the blackest radio show on the internet. We bring you our opinion on topics that affect the black community in an effort to enlighten, enrich, and empower every brother and sister that falls under the sound of our voice. We operate on a no-hating frequency, so be prepared for us to keep it 100% real and 100% black all the time. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, that's it. Go to our YouTube, hit the subscribe button, click that bell icon, leave a comment. We'll notify you when shows are coming up. And just make sure you tell everybody about the blackest radio show on the internet, the Man Listen Show. I'm your host, Mark B. Let's bring the crew in. Shout out to C. So yeah, man. I know you too. So I know y'all probably gonna be like, no, you haven't. But have you all been following the P. Diddy trial at all and things that are going on?
I mean, it's hard not to. Honestly, it's hard not to, because regardless of what you think about what he did or is accused of doing, or him as a person, a large chunk of our young adulthood, he was, he had a piece in the soundtrack, and whether it was him as an artist making songs, or him producing, or him, whatever. So, we all have a slight connection to him, I guess you would say, maybe. So yeah, I've been paying a little bit of attention to it.
Do you think I started to post this like you post like a random question? I was gonna do this in my Facebook group. Then I thought about it. I was like, of course not. I was gonna say, is this the biggest trial of this century? Technically, it could be. I was gonna say of our lifetime, but our lifetime has got to be OJ. OJ's got it. OJ hands down, because OJ had the celebrity element, it had the race element, it had corrupt police, a superstar attorney. Like, ain't nothing messing with OJ. But is this like number two?
I don't know. I never thought about it in those terms, honestly.
Is it bigger than Meg and Tory?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking Cosby. I think because it hurt my feelings so much with Cosby. That was a little bit more.
That he got convicted, Cos?
No, that he was out there doing it.
That wasn't news like that, though.
I mean, but it was like, remember, it was like, and I feel like I had like a huge falling out with some people on your page about this, but it was like, it was one person, then it was two, and it was 10, then it was 20, and it was like, people went from being like, not Bill, to maybe Bill, to kind of Bill, to yeah, Bill. So I think the dialogue between people, and kind of like, I mean, like, people who know me like well know that Claire Huxtable is the reason why I chose to be a lawyer. It's like, so it was the sole reason for me choosing this profession. So obviously I thought very highly of the Cosbys, who were fake people, but obviously I was choosing my life at 16. I'm not saying I was making the best decisions, but so I think, to me, that whole trial and all of that information coming out, because that had some of those same elements. It had the celebrity, it had the race, it had drug use, what was acceptable in the past versus what's acceptable now. And it was so many things that you could disagree on and argue about, that I just thought that was a little bit more.
To me, the actual trial kind of went under the radar when you talk about Cosby.
Yeah.
What I will say about the whole Cosby news, in terms of like all of his accusers and everything that went on with that, really, that was like the spark of the Me Too movement. And if you think about it, that really changed how we interacted as men and women. Number one, I don't think the male versus female divide, the gender war wasn't there. That started then, right? That started at that point. And then I think that the Me Too movement came along, and a lot of us had to wake up to how, even though we weren't rapey, creepy ass dudes, still some of the stuff that we were taught that was somewhat appropriate was like, nah, that ain't gonna get you a case, but it's not appropriate, right? And a lot of us, my age, had to learn quick,
Yep.
especially like I was talking to my homeboy the other day. I'm divorced 3 years now. And I was like, how the game was 15, 18 years ago when I was married versus being
Yeah.
single now, it's totally different.
Yeah.
It's totally different. And not to say cats is out there just, wilding out on chicks, but still the rules of engagement have changed because of that. And I think because of the better, because like most people, realize, and then I think this for a lot of us, we didn't realize like how terrible things were for our sisters, like on college campuses and other places like that. So
Yeah.
um,
That's huge. That was a
that,
huge part
I
of it
think
for
in that
me.
way it was major. I agree with you on that. I don't think the actual trial was major though. That's the only
Mm.
thing I would disagree on.
Yeah.
You know, I don't actually watch the trials because that's what I do for a living. That don't really interest me.
Yeah.
Well, this not being aired anyway. They just basically reporting on it because I guess it's a
Hmm.
federal trial, and I guess they don't
and,
show them.
and the damn court cartoonist
Yeah,
is so shady.
shady boy.
But you knew Puff was gonna look different because, like, I got all this gray, man. I hate it. And Puff, way older than me. Puff was in his late 50s.
Yeah, mid to late 50s. Yeah,
Yeah, he got to be mid, whatever 55, 56, whatever.
yeah,
This shit was jet black hair, everything, And I was like, oh yeah, he gonna look a lot different when he come to court.
yeah.
For sure, for sure. I'm gonna tell you, man, I feel like, and not to get into too much like celebrity stuff, but like at first I didn't feel like they were really proving that he did something that could constitute a RICO case. Is Puff a POS? Yes, yeah, he is. Is he wrong for beating on that girl and doing all those things that he was doing to her or coercing her to do or whatever? Absolutely, right? But I didn't see. I was like, well, damn, how are you trying to get him on a RICO? But then some people started, making a case to say, look, you really ain't got to. The feds ain't really got to do too much to prove RICO. So you might. So I was like, Puff, mess around, and get off. Puff, mess around, and get off. But now I'm thinking like, nah.
That's
That's
because people thought Cassie was the biggest piece of the puzzle and she was the smallest.
right. If
Ain't that something? Because like
yeah,
it's major.
yeah. No, Puff getting off is where how we ended up here. But the the
Actually, him not getting. I ain't gonna go there.
nah, but no, you're right, man. It was, and I still see people saying, man, this ain't really criminal, it's just people engaging in consensual activities and she's being coerced, but ultimately she made that decision and she stayed and all this stuff. And it's that's the whole thing that makes any trial. Like if it's a clean cut obvious case, then it's not going to be much news, but I think you need a certain segment or a large percentage of the population to be on both sides, whether it's because of emotional ties or because of actual not having evidence or something. You need both of those to make the trial. So that's kind of how you go back to the OJ thing. There was a large segment. There were people who, no matter what evidence was proven to be false, he did it. And there's people that's going to, no matter what evidence was proven to be correct and accurate, he didn't do it. So I think we're in a similar situation with this Puff thing.
I'm gonna tell y'all this, man. This is how big it was. It was my freshman year, so y'all was still in high school. But when the verdict was being read, they brought a TV in to Brady. They had a TV in Brady Commons.
Wow.
I was proud to watch the verdict. I stayed in my dorm room because I was like, "Hey, they convict him, man. It's finna be on." And there's this little handkerchief head dude that stayed in my dorm. You know, he was all up in the white folks' ass and shit. And so when they announced the verdict, all the brothers was like, "Yeah," except for one. This little dude, he was like, "Fuck." He was like running through, hitting doors and hitting stuff, man, because he thought OJ should be convicted. But I told y'all before, I think I said this before. I talked to some people that are from LA, and they say everybody in LA know that OJ didn't do that. There's no way he could
Mhm.
have did it. You know, she was involved with some other stuff, and that was a pure race trial right there. Had that been back in Tulsa, back in the day, OJ, it wouldn't have been no preponderance of evidence. Now you say to Rika, they'd have strung OJ up.
Hey, they had
Right.
to find a big tree, but yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, man.
Yeah, but I was in the eighth grade. I wasn't in high school, but
I was asking, I never, I was in my American history class. So yeah, it
I
was,
was on the bus.
yeah.
Hey, that's crazy. I was a freshman in college. I was a freshman in college. But speaking of Tulsa, though, the mayor just came out with a trust fund to I don't know if donate or target like $100 million towards the descendants, the victims of the Tulsa race massacre we call Black Wall Street. This is targeted towards business loans, improvement to housing, things of that nature. So in a sense, this is somewhat a form of reparations due to the descendants of the people that were affected by that terrorism, white terrorism, call it,
Hmm.
right? And I sat there and I'm sitting there thinking about we really got to protect this mayor. I think he's a black mayor. I'm not sure if he's
Yep.
the first black mayor of Tulsa or not, but they put this into place, and you already know that the other side they don't take L's like this sitting down. So I'm pretty confident the feds will probably get involved to try to say it's violating some sort of protected class, or it's violating DEI principles or something to that effect. And I don't know. What do y'all think about this? It's crazy. I almost called you my daughter's name. It's crazy, Enrica. Um, I graduated from college. Lab did too. And you know when I first learned about Black Wall Street, me and Lab left the club drunk at IHOP. And this weird dude, shout out to this brother. He kind of had like a Milli Vanilli. You remember Milli Vanilli had them little braids and stuff. We had like the little fake braids. He kind of had like a little bang cut off right here. So me and Lab chilling, man. And he just comes up to us like, "Hey man, y'all ever heard about Black Wall Street?" And he just sat there and proceeded to drop knowledge on us, man, about what happened.
Straight up. Yeah. That's
And
crazy.
it's like, and me not knowing about that, even though I graduated from college, that's on me, not my teachers or the institution.
Right.
But I would say I definitely learned about that in high school.
Right.
Mm-mm.
No, it was definitely not coming up in high school. They weren't teaching anything about that.
And to think about the fact that Black Wall Street was literally a half a day's drive. What was it's
If
not
that,
if that, I mean,
you can
from
get to Tulsa
4 hour
in
drive,
the
you know what I
morning
mean?
time.
Yeah. So it's not like this was something that happened in a third world country or halfway across the ocean, or at the North Pole or something. I mean, this is something that literally happened within a 4 or 5 hour drive of all of us, man, and we never had heard of it. That was just amazing to me. And
Yep.
I ain't gonna lie, I took it with a grain of salt. I'm like, this dude probably in here at 2:30 in the morning, drunk or high or whatever, and just talking. But
Mhm.
after he spit all that, we sure enough, it was in the early days of Google, I guess, was able to look it up, and sure enough, he was spot on.
So
Oh,
this
man.
investment before you go, Rika, is for North Tulsa. You've been to Tulsa. That's where the Greenwood, Archer, and Pine, the black neighborhood. That's where it's at. Just
Mhm.
downtown. They got a nice museum and everything set up. If you go through Tulsa, you definitely should go there. There's a monument to the people that were terrorized by these white supremacists. But this is supposed to be going to invest in housing, cultural preservation, and economic development. Now, I don't know what cultural preservation means, but housing, especially since it's rent and mortgages is crazy right now, and
Mm.
economic development. Now, what I don't want to see, because we're talking about Oklahoma, you're gonna see some $5 black folks. You know, I like white folks got themselves on the Dawes Road.
Right, right,
They would be like, I too was impacted by the Tulsa race riot.
Right.
right.
And I'm like, I bet you were on
Bet
the
you was.
beneficiary side.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. What you think?
Yeah, I don't remember when I learned about it, but I know that it's like there's like some type of like moment where you shift from being oblivious to the details of history that kind of make up the underbelly of, what really happens. Because, we grow up being taught that, oh, you just pull yourself up from your bootstraps. Oh, you just work hard, everything will work out. They don't ever teach the parts where it's like, oh, if you work hard and amass this, amount of wealth and property, we'll just come through and bomb it real quick to reset you back to zero and start over. So it's like once you start really like looking into that and having those conversations, it's like you meet more people who have those conversations. And so you learn more and you just are more aware of it. So I don't know the point that I first started having these type of conversations, but once you start, you can't stop. I think that legally, if he worded it to make it for the district and not for black people, then that was pretty smart because what you would look for is disparities. And you can't argue disparities if this region was impacted and now this region is getting the benefit. Now, are there going to be some scraggler white people that's over there now with some properties? Yes, but back to the cultural preservation, if that property is like some of the original, property that was there, preservation of it is still important. So,
And hopefully they're savvy enough to put things into place that really impact us in a positive way. I don't know how many black contractors there are in Oklahoma. Black consulting firms, black media. There's so much. Y'all remember when I said I'm done with supporting Kaepernick when he had all those white attorneys selling with the
mhm.
NFL? There's ways that you could put money in black people's pocket and help the community. So even if, say, the people who are non-black come into this district and get something, you can put stipulations in there and say, hey, listen, you got to have so many bids that go to black contractors or something to that
Mhm.
effect. Now, again, with this current administration, there may be some things that they may do to fight that to make it to where that's not possible. But one of our frat brothers, me and Lab's frat brothers, said this: I don't think black people sue enough. They quick, if you notice, they're quick to take us to trial and to say, oh, this isn't right, and I'm Asian, and the black folks are getting into college when I should get in more. And we saw that happen to them. What happened to them? Shout out to the
Yeah.
Asian. But we have to start contesting things more ourselves and not just taking the shit laying down. I feel like that's something that we have gotten away from. And, we talked about that, when Erika interviewed me last week for my movie. We talked about how we had people who would go out and say, no, 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 no. Well, let's set a precedent. We're going to target this school right here. And we're going to get one of our brothers into there. And we're going to make sure that he's treated fairly. We got to get that. We got to get that mindset back. And I don't know how we do that.
Well, it costs money to sue for one, but
Y'all don't
you
do stuff
gotta
on
have money.
contingency?
You gotta have
Y'all
people
don't,
willing to work pro bono.
Yeah,
but
that's
don't you
it.
do stuff on contingency though?
Yeah, but so like let's say I want to do something on contingency. I can't handle a case of that magnitude. When the expert wants $5,000 up front, I'm gonna be like, all right, y'all, that's my time. It's just so much that, especially
Mhm.
like a solo practitioner who might have the heart to do it and the time to do it, don't have necessarily the resources to do it. Because you're not just saying take those resources and put it into a case and that may go 10 years through appeals courts and all
Right.
this other stuff. You also taking those resources away from the clients that I have that could pay out next week. So that's stopping more revenue from coming in. So it's a bigger like challenge than it seems like. Now me, I sue everybody for everything. I threatened to sue my dealership last week because my car needed work. And I was just like, hey, is this covered by the warranty? They was like, you need a diagnostic to see if it's covered by a warranty. I was like, I already have a diagnostic. I'm not paying for another one. They was like, well, that's the only way we can see if it's covered by warranty. I said, all right, well, how about I sue y'all and then get the discovery and then we can look through it together. And they was like, hold on a second. Oh, yeah, I just went back there and talked to them and they said, yeah, you have a limited powertrain warranty. And so that doesn't cover whatever you need. I said, look how easy that was.
Right.
All you had to do was go back there and ask.
Look, I'm telling you, man. I had a situation with one of my kids, and I'm not an attorney, but I got friends who are, and they're very fucking good at what they do, and they willing to fight for me. So I knew one of my kids was being done wrong. So Mr. Chat GPT, write this as a high powered attorney, uh, and imply that litigation will be following. Put that in there within 2 days. We found what the problem was. We can go forward. Now, if they had called my bluff, then I'd have to make them phone calls, right?
Right,
Like,
right,
you
right.
got to go forward. But I don't think we sue enough, man.
No, I think you're right. You
Yeah.
can see how this current administration, uh that's how I think we see how the inhabitant of the White House, how he actually ended up with a lot of money. It seems like he's quick to sue, quick to litigate, because there are people who will be like, you know what, I'll just settle, I'll do whatever, because I don't have the funds, like Enrique said, to battle this out for 7, 8, 9 years in court.
I hope you ain't like Puff and settle and still go to jail.
Yeah.
Well, you
It
should
happened.
settle a lot quicker, dude.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly, exactly.
you gave her that money and you still gonna go to jail.
Well, he should have never let
but
that document get released.
And that damn white boy gonna spend it. I don't care what nobody say.
yeah,
Catch him.
but see, this is the thing though. When
He'll
it
get
comes
all
to,
that. He'll get all that.
well, I mean, at least half, right?
When they said that he was in on it too, I was just like,
Yeah, no,
That's what I'm saying.
he
I was
Yeah.
like,
knew.
not
Yeah,
you introduced her to her next dude. That's how I
right,
be too.
right. But when it come back to the lawsuit stuff though, you talk about the previously we would have NAACP lawyers or ACLU or whoever, or Urban League, whoever had lawyers. And I think as a large segment of our community has kind of abandoned those organizations for whatever reason. Some of it is mismanagement on their part and not following through on things on their part, or not having the same vision as the greater community, and so I think that's a big part of why some of these cases aren't, or some of these issues aren't being litigated as they used to.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And
Mm.
I don't know. It feels as if I can only speak for my circle or whatever. It feels like we have become more and more as social media has connected us more. Like, we talk about I seen kids like I saw when you was a baby. Now I'm watching your mom posting your graduation pictures. So it seems like we know more about each other.
Mm-hmm.
We are less interconnected physically. We don't move in mass like we used to. We ain't without we people say that hey, we not our ancestors. Yeah, we not our
Exactly.
ancestors because they was a lot tougher than us.
A lot tougher. A lot
For
Forget
tougher.
sure.
Uber and all that old kind of shit. They was like, hey, listen, man, we'll walk 5 miles.
Feet to pavement.
We'll walk 5 miles one way to break this bus system. We ain't
Mm-hmm.
built like that.
Right.
We ain't built like that. They pay one rapper to come out and say some silly shit. They break our movements.
Yeah.
So
Or
stop
you,
playing.
and that's kind of the it's interesting, or your parents or your grandparents did all of that, like, man, we standing on this, we not wavering, we ain't crossing the picket line, because we want our kids to have a better life, right? And
Mhm.
so then we all had better lives, better situations than our parents, and it just happens through history. Everybody gets more advanced, or for the most part, society. And so you look back on it, and yeah, 2 generations ago was even tougher than your parents. You know what I mean? 4 generations ago was tougher than them. So it's kind of a natural progression. It's never going to be where the next generation is as hard or as as stalwart as the previous generation. It's just how it happens in the U.S. at least, and
I think
how it is currently.
I saw somebody said like maybe it lasts like 3 generations. So like if your grandfather had to grind, your dad had to grind, and then the progress that they make gets to you by the time you get to your descendant basically ain't shit because you done got to the point where you've given them everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Then it has to start all the way over again.
Mm-hmm.
And what I will say, and shout out to Pastor Jamal Bryant with his movement against Target. And a lot of black people are saying, we ain't never going back to Target.
Oh.
Never going back to Target. And look how that pendulum swung. I used to go into Target. And I remember the last time I went to Target, I was like, damn, they got black people everywhere in here.
Yeah.
On the walls, the mannequins, the shirts, and all this old shit. It's June, you know what I'm saying? When you go in June, they have all kind of Pride Month stuff and everything. And I think I said this on the show before. Growing up in Topeka, Kansas, like it was major for us to see black people in representation, like on TV or in the news or anything. Like, oh, they got black people over there. They got black people over there. And so that's what happens when you grow up in the city like I did. Like I remember when, and what's crazy, it's so sad. She is like the biggest damn sellout now. Harris Faulkner. I remember Harris Faulkner. She came on Kansas City News because growing up in Topeka, we got Kansas City news, right? You got Topeka News and you got Kansas City News. When she came on, the amount of pride that black people had in seeing her, because this was like what it had to be like the mid 80s laugh.
Yeah, it was late, maybe late 80s, late
Was it
80s,
late
probably
80s?
early 90s. Yeah.
Okay, my time frame is off, but I just remember this was
Mhm.
the time when
It might have been, yeah.
this is the time when light skin was in.
Yeah.
And you had to look like either like light skinned androgynous or like they couldn't tell if you was mixed or not. You know what I mean? You had to look like that. Harris Faulkner was a regular looking, beautiful black
Hmm.
woman. And the amount of pride we had in that, and then to see where she is now. It's
Yeah.
like, damn.
I don't know who this is, so elaborate for those of us who don't know.
Harris Faulkner is a news anchor on Fox News now.
Hmm.
And she's all about MAGA and
Yeah.
shenanigans they in. So
Wow.
you go to being a black icon to MAGA.
Trying to be the next Omarosa.
But at least Omarosa was down for the people though. Omarosa had the
Yeah. And truth, she was
Omarosa
well before
married to a
Omarosa.
black man.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like shit, Omarosa's fine to me. I don't care what nobody say.
Yeah.
Omarosa.
I don't know that that's what we was debating, but okay.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I don't think that's what we was debating.
Yeah, right. No, right.
I mean, that was crucial to the
Yeah, crucial to the story. It was a
To
Harris
the
Faulkner.
assessment
Yeah.
in your mind. Okay.
right.
Yeah. I don't know. I think sometimes we look at people and assign them attributes that we have no idea whether they possess them or not. So then we get mad when we realize they don't have the attributes that we made up for them in our minds. So she was probably always like that. That's probably why they put her on the show in the first place. I mean,
That you make a good point with that.
she was probably moving in those rooms, shaking those hands, shucking and
Right.
jiving.
You make a very good point with that because I was just thinking about it. How many people did we know in high school and college who wanted to be rappers? And had they broke through and got with Puff, what would they have had to do to break through?
Mm.
Because I
Get,
never
get broke through.
they got broke through, yeah, broke back.
Oh, this is not a laughing matter. We're laughing
but
at the jokes, not the situation, people.
definitely not the situation.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah.
But I never listened to their music, but that group Day 26,
Yeah.
something happened to one of them boys in Puff, and they did an interview, and as distraught as he was, and his homeboys, how crushed they were, because they must have known what happened to him. dude, sometimes, man, people say you got to sell your soul to make it. You,
Yeah.
you just don't know. It's like, bro, hey, man, we don't need no more rappers.
Right. And
We don't need no more rappers, man.
that takes a
We
whole
need plumbers. We need electricians, data analysts. Like, we don't need no more rappers, dog.
at
No, what
all.
we
We're
don't
full.
need is more billionaires using their money, power, and wealth to control people
Yeah.
and get people to do things that they don't want to do, and blowing up
That's
people's
what,
cars in their driveway and,
man.
controlling people's careers just because you say so. That's what we don't need. More billionaires.
And they
Yeah.
You
try
can
to
try
say
to be whatever you want to be.
Kid Cudi a snitch because he got on the stand. Like, nah, like,
Yeah. Yeah. You blew up my car, dog.
bro, I always said, listen, if you are the code got messed up.
It
Yeah.
did.
We
It
talked
did.
about this with Sha'Carri. We was like,
Yeah.
when I was growing up, if you was slated to go to the Olympics, would nobody in the neighborhood think about selling you no dope to smoke?
Yeah.
And if they found out that you were the person that sold Sha'Carri the dope and she couldn't go to the Olympics, you got to vacate the premises because they finna beat your ass down, dog, messing up this girl's life. And now you got civilians having to adhere to criminal penitentiary codes.
Right.
I ain't never heard Kid Cudi be no thug on wax or no stuff.
Nah, Kid Cudi is far from that. Exactly.
Right.
Well, not even just that, but snitching is when you were involved with the crime, not when you do the crime to me, fam.
Right. Right.
No.
Or if you in the game. If you in the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
You in the
Yeah. If you're
game.
in the
Yeah.
game, you get
Yeah.
robbed, and that's part of it. But I didn't sign up for any of this. You come kick my door in, I'm telling. I'm
Right.
turning over ring footage,
And you do it as you
doing
don't
all
got no
that. I'm
mask
not a
on. Of
snitch.
course,
I'm a
gonna
victim.
tell.
Right. But speaking of like plumbers and electricians, they put an end to Job Corps.
I didn't know that.
So they did shut down Job Corps. Basically, the Trump administration, they said they were going to put a pause to it
Mm-hmm.
To the funding.
and pause to the funding. So it had to shut down. So basically, they were talking about the low success rate, low graduation rates, the the success of the students that graduated. Like I think I read some of them were still only making like $15,000 annually. The amount of costs that was going in, like it was like $88,000. And I don't know the veracity of all these numbers. I'm just kind of giving you estimates. Like $88,000 per student. And if they graduate, it was like 150, but they only, making like 20,000 once they graduate. Then they talked about a lot of the crime that was associated with Job Corps and, the assaults and different things that go along with that. Now, if you know anything about Job Corps, you know that this is like last chance you for people who are not athletes. It gives them a chance to get a trade. It gives them a chance to be able to learn a skill to be able to make something of their lives. I gotta say that the points that they were pointing out, I used to see that, but the kids that I knew with the Job Corps, like you want none of be like, oh, we was in Job Corps fighting and whatever, and this. But my thing is, it's like comparing kids who have parents who can afford to put them in private school versus parents who have absolutely no money, and you're taking these kids that come from you don't know what type of trauma or adverse childhood experiences they've been through, and you put them all in one location and trying to get them to learn and be in a system that is regimented and to give them discipline, and you think that you're not going to have problems, right? I don't think it's right, and I think it's going to have a negative impact on poor people, but primarily, my concern, Black people.
I mean, yes, but if you're running a business and you got numbers like that, at what point are you going to say, hey, we got to do something different here? Or we got to change things around, or we got to start, revising this. My problem is that you can't just stop the funding and think that you're not going to create a bigger problem. But requiring people to meet certain standards to keep the funding is a different conversation. It's like, come on, man, you got to graduate people to keep your school operational. You have to. So, you know what I mean? You got to keep crime down. Whatever you got to do that. They do come with these backgrounds. then we got to incorporate some type of mandatory counseling or something like that. There have to be conversations about improvement if you want to stay in business, no matter what the business is. Nobody's going to keep giving you money to come up with some basic scores and be like, yeah, but I helped 3 people. And it's like, so obviously, I don't think the program should have just lost its funding, but I also think that I don't know very many Job Corps success
Success.
stories,
Yeah.
and the program has a good foundation.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something there that's not connecting with the community. And I think that's what should be addressed, not just pulling the funding.
And realistically, there also needs to be some kind of better, I think, partnership with the private industry though. Because if you're coming out from that, you only making 20,000 a year. Come, I mean, yeah. Why? What would possess you to be like, okay, I'm gonna stick this out. I can go make $20,000 a year doing a lot of things,
Yeah.
And so there should be some investment from the public industries. And so, it's not necessarily what we're talking about today, but that's one of my big issues with everything is these corporations, they claim to be pro-American, but they count on us to subsidize a lot of their workers. And then they get mad at people who are needing assistance for housing assistance and all that, and pay your people a living wage. Pay your people enough to where they can live and survive, to where they don't have to live 5 people in one house, to make ends meet. And then your job retention will be better. People will be happier in their jobs. There'll be less movement, all that stuff. But it's the dollar's the bottom line. And same thing with this Job Corps situation is the bottom line is they feel like they're sinking money into a program that's not working. And instead of keep sinking it in there, they'll say, we'll just get rid of it. And then we'll probably we'll have a concept of a plan of a replacement at some point.
Right. We've been thinking.
Here's the thing though. And Enrique, you make a point that I really agree with and one that I disagree with. The one that I disagree with, you said, oh, well, we say 3 people. That's 3 more people than we had. Now, I understand that's still bad business, but I feel like we have to try to save save whoever. I would say with this show, yes, do I want the millions of views and all that, but if we reach 4 or 5 people and we make a point to them, then we've done our job with this podcast. So that's just always my mindset when it comes to doing things for the community. Now, what I really, really agree with is partnering with different corporations and local businesses to land those jobs. I'm in an industry where you look at the trucking industry. Kids younger than us, our kids, the millennials like Arika, the younger millennials, like we grew up playing like video games and stuff. We didn't really work with our hands. And the guys like keep the trucks going, the auto mechanics, all of this, man, they getting old.
Yeah.
Some of the dudes, I saw a dude that he'd been working on trucks and vehicles so long that his hands started to form the shape of the tools that he was using every single day.
Walking around with 2 wrenches.
And I'm not exaggerating. So like he had like the dents and curves in his hands because that's all he was doing was working every day. You just said it. We're not built like our ancestors.
No.
And a lot of this stuff is computerized. So there's definitely a way that you can say, okay, we're not just going to put you out here. And we know you don't have any knowledge about putting a resume together, or you don't have the network in place to maybe help you find a position that's going to give you a more positive outcome. And that's my problem with the administration, because this isn't a situation where you could just be like, I'm going to throw 145% tariff on this just so we can renegotiate. Now, you got kids who, we moved away to college, and most of us knew we had a home and a bedroom to go back to. We had somewhere to go back to. I know, Erika. That's why I said most of us. What about the kid that was just like, hey, man, this my living situation is not what it's about. I can't afford college. I'm finna go to Job Corps because they live there.
Yeah.
Now, hey man, go figure it out. And they like they adults. Yeah, they like you go to a foster home.
Mm-hmm.
Do. So I feel like it's somewhat immoral just to cut it off right then and there, and not have anything put into place to help. And
Yeah.
Well, they got three hots in the cot waiting for these
That's
people.
what they hoping for anyway.
Is that? I mean, seriously, I'm not trying to be funny,
to
but
send them out to the middle of nowhere,
yeah,
where all the little white folks in the little small town Oklahoma can sit there and work the jail, and you can fund their economy.
right. And
That's
you
what they
can learn to trade in there too, and we only got to pay you 50 cents a day. You know what I'm saying? So
cooking right
Right.
now. You cooking right now, boy.
But the crazy thing is like here, most people know in St. Louis, we just got hit by that tornado. So everybody's been like spending all their money, extra money, volunteering resources are going to that. So when we found out about Job Corps today, one of my sorors posted in our chat about how it's 35 displaced men or just like or kids or whatever in Job Corps. And it's like, what are we supposed to do with these babies? Not babies, but in
yeah,
between that adult
They still
baby
babies. They
yeah,
still
they
stage.
still
Yeah.
are. Hey, if they can be on your insurance till they 26, you still can call them about your baby.
Listen.
still babies for real.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
so now it's like, now the community is still once again carrying the burden of what the government should be doing because they gonna get the benefit, like you said, with the 50 cent uh jobs and
right.
whatnot. That's why I think private prisons are the bane of existence. But
I remember when I worked for in state government, man, there were certain products that we had to, like, if you wanted to do procurement, you had to get them from the vocational, whatever they call it, vocational
yeah,
services, which was the guys in prison making them. And there were no cheaper pretty much than if you were to buy from just a private business, third party business.
hmm
And so to know what they're paying those guys, but they're still charging regular retail prices, it's a racket.
it's because they've negotiated that contract.
Yeah.
When I first learned of private prisons, I learned, I think maybe it was California, where they had a contract where if they didn't have a certain number of heads in beds, the state had to supplement them.
Yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
then that incentivized the state to put heads in beds. And it's like, oh, I see what y'all got going here.
Mm-hmm.
There was a
So that was when I
Prison
first learned
industrial
about private
complex.
prisons. I was like, that's the
Yeah.
worst.
there was a movie and it wasn't the best movie, but it was gritty, and it had like Q-Tip, Mary J. Blige, Fat Joe, some of
Mary J. Blige.
some of the cats from The Wire,
And
and
Mary J. Blige.
I love that. But like it really showed the negative side. Not that there's a positive side. It really showed the unfiltered horror of not only the prison industrial complex system, but private prisons as well. So it showed like Q-Tip, Mary J. Blige was his mom, and then it showed like his pops. How his pops was locked up for some police harassment. He was already on papers, so they locked him back up. And then Q-Tip ended up getting arrested. I don't want to give away the movie in case y'all watch it, but then he gets locked up in a private prison, and it shows like the living conditions, the hard work, the asbestos, and then you throw on top of that just being in prison and dealing with the violence that comes with that. It really it was a scare straight for me. I know I ain't never want to go to that damn prison, but yeah, it's sad, man. But this goes back to the point, lab, when we talk about the organizations not really being in place to like sue like the NAACP. And maybe I just don't know who they are. There may be some out there. But that's when we have some of these organizations stepping forward and saying, hey, listen, let's partner with this business. And even though they say, hey, we can't do DEI, we look at the wealth numbers and we know who's at the bottom. It's us. So even if you say, hey, listen, let's partner with giving, entry level jobs to these people so they can be on the track to do auto mechanic work, plumbing work, or whatever. Even if you put in, poor whites into that, you're still going to help young Black people as well. So that's something that we could do to really change things around. But I hope people see all the people that say, hey, Biden, Trump, there ain't no difference. I'm telling y'all, Trump, the loud part is Russia, Ukraine, and getting the immigrants out. The silent but deadly
Mhm.
things that they're doing to target black people.
Yeah. Hmm.
Always.
That's the silent but deadly. They tried to sneak into this big beautiful bill before we go. They tried to sneak into this thing, how courts can make decisions. They try to sneak it into the bill how courts can make decisions in terms of like bond, like whether a bond can be placed, or and then they try to make it to where like you could go back basically infinity. So all the shit that Trump has been involved in, anybody that his flunkies, they're trying to find a way to circumvent the judicial branch. Because some of these judges are like, nah, man, you can't just throw tariffs and mess up the whole country.
Right. Right.
You
Yeah.
just can't do that. They're trying to find a way. Okay, Biden and Obama's people still in here. We got to find a way to go around them. And they try to
Hmm.
stick it in. They say they might not be able to do it, but like we said, they don't have a problem with wielding power. They don't have a problem being like, "Yo, this isn't ethically right for the people." Nah, we're trying to preserve the way we live. Forget y'all.
Right. Well, this only proves to me, and it's you talk about patriots in the United States. Black people have been the biggest advocates and the biggest of the United States, more so even than the ideal of the United States of America than white people have ever been.
Ever.
Seriously.
I said it on
And,
the show. My dad and my uncle fought in Korea. They weren't even full citizens. You don't
yeah,
get
and that's the crazy part is and then you do all that, and then your kids come to the realization that what they was just blowing smoke up your what basically to get you to buy in. Then
Hmm.
cool, once you buy in, we can do what we really want to do. We never wanted you to be a full citizen. We never wanted you to have equal access. We never wanted you to have equal opportunity.
never.
Hmm.
Recruiter used to call when I was in high school. Ricky, you probably have to deal with this, but I know Lab did. When you was your junior, senior year in high school, them Army and
Yeah.
Navy recruiters would call in the crib. My dad would cuss them out. No, no, don't call here no more. Mm-mm. Yeah.
And he served, you know what I'm saying? So
And they know
But he
better than to
knew.
call me.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. He knew. So
Yeah.
exactly,
But
exactly.
look, here's the deal. My dad said, I know I said on the show before, he was like, dude, he grew up in rural Missouri. He told me, he was like, man, I went down and signed up, and I was like, let's go. And they was like, wait a minute, go back and say bye to your mom. He was like, nah, man, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
There's nothing for me here. There's nothing for me as a black man in rural Missouri. So
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
he goes and he sees the world. One thing he said, man, there's nothing like the US. Y'all go other places, you see there's nothing like the US, even though they doing us wrong.
Hmm.
Places it just ain't the same. But then he also saw where like even though I fought for this country, I'm still a second class
Yeah.
citizen. He was like, man, I was a medic in Korea, dressing wounds and doing all this. He thought I thought I was gonna take the GI Bill and become a doctor. I come back, they got me working at the VA, and I'm making less money than the candy stripers.
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, man, I think we talked about it enough. Make sure y'all follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Man Listen Show. Click the link in our bio. Buy our books, buy our hoodies, buy our t-shirts. It's summertime coming up. It's about to start getting hot. So get you a t-shirt. And yeah, just make sure you tell everybody about the Blackest Radio Show on the internet, the Man Listen Show. We'll have you next time. Peace.
Yeah.
Holla at you, see.